Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Amy Bett on the podcast. She is the co founder and CEO of Melo, which is a sparkling kava beverage. Kava is the root of a plant that grows mainly in the Pacific Islands. It's an interesting conversation with Amy because she's an entrepreneur. She started her company, Melo, in Australia, which is where she's from, but realized that you actually can't sell a flavored kava beverage in Australia. So she realized that she could in the US. So she picked up and moved herself only, came to the US, rented a room in somebody's house in Los Angeles to start the business here in the US. Now her family is here and she is scaling. So it's a very interesting episode kind of her journey from being a W-2 employee to being an entrepreneur, moving from Australia to the US, and really kind of how she's scaling her business. So I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. So let's get Amy on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Amy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, let's jump right in. I guess give us a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Amy Bett. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Melo, which is a kava sparkling beverage, which we launched here into the States in March of last year. You might hear that I have an Australian accent. So I'm from Australia, created the foundations of the company whilst living in Australia, but I've now moved over to Los Angeles and I'm growing and leading the scale of the business from here.
Got it. So I guess, so when did you officially start the business in Australia?
So we had the idea from Melo late 2022. So we were working on it for a couple of years really before fully having a product in our hands and selling to customers.
Got it. So let's talk about I always like to hear like the entrepreneurial journey, like how did it, and I read the website, so maybe it's exactly the same story on the website, but like how did you come up with it? Why did you come up with it? Like what's the origin story of Melo?
Yeah, so I can share with you the real story of what happened. And not that the website is fake, but there's a bit more, I guess, of a moment in time that created our drink. So I had a project management background working for a global retailer, like a fast fashion retailer, moved into online business and was really focused on making something of myself, becoming a high performer. And at the time, I've been the breadwinner of my family since 2017 when my husband suffered a brain injury that ended his corporate career. So I felt a lot of
Wow.
pressure to make, a decent income so that we weren't a single income family. And throughout that journey, I felt like the only thing really holding me back or making me not hit my health goals and not really feel like the best version of myself was alcohol.
Mm.
So not that I've ever been a alcoholic ever, or not that I would say that I've been an extremist when it comes to alcohol, but when you become 30 and you're a mum, you can't drink like you used to. And so I went out on my own mission to find something that helped me to still have a relaxing feeling. Non-alcoholic drinks that didn't have any effect at all really, it wasn't of an interest to me. I'm Australian. We love to have a good time and life is stressful. So I felt like
Yeah.
unless I could find something that would give me some kind of feeling, I felt like I wouldn't feel like the same of what I was looking for. But there was a moment where I had a beautiful opportunity to go to Bora Bora of all places. Like imagine
Nice.
serene and beautiful place in the world. And I was there for a business retreat working on my health goals and my business goals and what I really wanted for myself. And I genuinely felt awesome. But then I came back to Australia and literally within days, like that following weekend, it was my best friend's wedding.
Mm.
And I got into old habits immediately, had a 3-day bender and woke up in bed, not really being able to get out of bed. And I was hungover for days. And I just had that, like, I never had such a differing situation in such a short amount of time. I still remember how great I felt to then the complete opposite, where I lost all that motivation and that like energy within myself, and I just felt like crap. And so it wasn't until I was actually truthfully like kind of having a bitch to my business coach about myself and being angry at myself for going into old habits so quickly after just having this transformational experience. And she was like, oh, look, have you heard about kava before? There is a root, a plant from the Pacific Islands like Fiji and Vanuatu. Funnily enough, I know you're in Austin, Justin. Well, she was based in Austin. And
cool.
She was like, there are all of these entrepreneurs in Austin that drink kava in like a tincture. She's like, it tastes terrible, but the feeling is great and people are switching alcohol for that. Well, as soon as she said that, my mind like literally exploded, because close to Australia is the Pacific Islands, and I have friends and one of our major shareholders whose family had ties in the Vanuatu and Pacific Islands, and later we found out that they actually had like owned a kava farm. So it was almost like things were meant to be. And we decided to see if we could transform the traditional kava experience. Like kava tastes super bitter and earthy. It's gritty. It's not a nice experience, but the effect, the calming feeling over your body is amazing. So we set out to see if we could create a kava drink that tastes good. And that's what we did.
So there's a lot there. And I guess kava, so it's a plant, it's a root. Maybe talk about kava, and then I want to go back to some of the other kind of origin story a little bit. But yeah, maybe let's dive into kava, because I had not heard of it before, even though I'm in Austin. I was telling you off air, like my wife and I are always looking at like interesting kind of non-alcoholic beverages, because while I don't mind a bourbon from time to time, it is nice to just sit in the pool and relax with a non-alcoholic beverage and still feel like you have had a drink or something, and it's a nice wake up the next morning versus maybe one too many. So yeah, let's talk about kava, and then we'll go back into some other stuff.
Totally. And I'm with you. I don't actually like labels. I still love a margarita on a Friday night or a glass of wine every now and then, but kava is that great drink that you can replace, a large portion of your alcohol and still have that effect. So what kava is, as I said, it's a plant from the Pacific Islands. The root of the plant is what has an active ingredient called a kava lactone. And those kava lactones are what give your body that calming, relaxing feeling. So I like to explain, and this is the way that the leading kava scientists talk about kava, is you can think about it like coffee, where coffee gives you like an upper, like a stimulant. Kava is the opposite. It's within the same kind of family as being like a natural root or a plant, but it relaxes you. But it's non-psychedelic. It's not addictive. When you drink kava, of course, everything in moderation, but when you drink noble varieties of kava, it's really healthy for you. It's anti-inflammatory, and it's not going to make you feel high or inebriated. It's think about it almost like a muscle relaxant. There's all of the Pacific Island footballers, they drink kava after footy for relaxing their muscles and calming back down. We've actually had a couple of what do you call them, cyclists, but they're triathletes. They've actually Melo and looked at their resting heart rate overnight and noticed a drop, which has been interesting. But it's one of the only active ingredients that does give you an effect that is non-psychedelic and non-addictive.
Got it. And so how long did it take for you to realize, hey, that you coincidentally were told about kava, and then coincidentally knew somebody that just happened to own a kava farm, right? Which is like, obviously stars aligned. You were meant to do this, it sounds like. And so how long did it take to get it from this earthy, bitter, not great taste to a drink that you could sit by the pool, sit in your house watching, Netflix, whatever, and enjoy? Like, I don't know if you have like a chemistry background or how, like a food scientist, like how did that all work?
I wish. So we basically took the kava root and we brought it over to Melbourne to start with, and we started working with a food scientist in Melbourne to extract it out and start playing with formulations. And it didn't actually take a very long time to find a baseline. It probably took us a month of working with this lady, the flavor scientist, to get it to a point where we're like, holy crap, like this is way better than everything else on the market. We had tried samples from the US and from Australia, and honestly, it tasted, in my opinion, undrinkable, like nothing that I would swap a cocktail for, or I knew that my friends definitely wouldn't drink it regularly, or like they'd shot it maybe with a chaser, but
Yeah.
it wasn't going after the experience that we were going for and the use case that we wanted. And so once we got it to that point, Australia right now, kava is legal. You can sell it in supermarkets, but it's the traditional way of drinking it. So it's it's like the root ground up and you add water to it. In Australia right now, they haven't changed their regulations to flavour kava. Australia is a very slow process, and changing any policies takes a really long time. So as soon as we understood that was a medium-term priority of the government, which could have taken 5-10 years, we'd already done some research in the US. So we decided that we had an idea here that we felt was good and there was a gap. So we decided to go after the US market. So the longest time it took was to actually find a co-packer that was familiar with kava, that would work with kava, but also was good at flavors. And that took like months, like maybe 3-4 months of searching, calling. You've got a lot against you when you're a new founder in a beverage space, because a lot of co-packers, they don't care. They're like, if you've got low minimums, like you're basically a waste of our time. It's more expensive for them to work with someone that's new based versus, big velocities coming through. So we finally found our like perfect co-packer. They already had experience with kava. They had a couple of their own kava teas and products. And I never forget flying to the US and turning up and sitting in this like boardroom and tasting the first samples of what they had refined. And it was a different extraction method. And I was like, wow, like, oh my God, we're onto something here. Like, how quickly can we get it to market? And that process from there, like that first process took time, but it was kind of seamless. But it was the next stage that I realized that you have to have a thick skin to be a beverage founder. There are so many production problems that, that we faced, and other issues that we faced that, could have and probably should have taken us out of the game pretty early.
And before we kind of get into where are you now, I kind of want to just take a step back if you're okay with it, because you obviously went through a very traumatic family life event with your husband, and to then take another risk to start a business. Like, how did you prepare yourself as a family, as a founder, to get ready to say, hey, I'm gonna quit my job and I have a steady income, but I'm going to bet on myself that this Melo drink is going to take me from, A to Z instead of A to B. And because most people wouldn't maybe do that. Right. So I'm just kind of curious if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about that journey and how, there's always it looks like an overnight success, but nothing's an overnight success. You just didn't see the 4, 5, 10 years of struggle and all that stuff. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing, I'd love to hear just a little bit about that, because I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So when my husband had his brain injury, we were both working at the same global retailer called the Cotton On Group. And I was actually, I think, about 7 months pregnant with our second child.
Oh,
so
wow.
My role was organising charity fund runs all around Australia at that time. And so I was doing a lot of travelling, and it became very obvious over time when we really started to understand my husband's brain injury more so, that not only did he have to finish his career and he couldn't be on a computer screen for hours on end that he used to. He used to be a planning manager, so he would do all the demand forecasting and the analytics and understand how much of stock and items needed to be in those stores at any one time. And he couldn't do that anymore. But not only that, he wasn't well enough to take care of our child. So we were in a bit of a predicament, and my other child as well, that I was like, okay, things have to shift. So I actually had to leave my job at Cotton On, and they were extremely supportive. They're amazing. I'm so lucky. So I first and foremost went into a I created an events business that I could have at home in Geelong where we lived, and Cotton On actually subcontracted me to organize some of their events, and then that led to other big corporate companies helping. And that was awesome, but I was burning out and I was just working really, really hard over 3 years. I'm like, I'm really interested in entrepreneurship and the online space. Let's try and I feel like I can create courses and teach. And so I became a certified Profit First professional and decided to teach business owners how to manage cash flow, because that was something I was struggling with as a business owner with my own events business. And so it was a journey. And then I never ever thought I'd start a beverage company. That really came from a personal need. And I think what allowed me to step into that field, and I guess not only did we start a beverage company in an industry that we knew nothing about, but also to launch the company, I had to move to the United States. And at a time, oh my God, I could cry thinking about it, but I had to leave my family in Australia.
Oh,
so
wow.
I moved to Los Angeles by myself in March of last year, and to get the business off the ground when it finally launched. And we couldn't afford, because we put all of our money into Melo, we couldn't afford to move the whole family over. And also we were just so unsure about, like, would this work? It's such a big disruption. It's going to take a lot of energy just to move the family over. We made the decision that it would be better for me to move over, rent a room in someone's house and just get to work. And so I would travel back and forth every 6 to 9 weeks. And at the time, my children were 3, 7 and 15, and get the business to a point. Now, my husband and children, or 2 of my daughters, moved over in February of this year. So that has felt like a big kind of full circle moment where my nervous system has regulated so much more, because as you said, like, a lot of people see success, but it is so much struggle. Like, I think we've actually probably been in not struggle mode, because I've always found a way to make, almost enough income that has supported our family to where I almost wanted to, but it hasn't been an easy journey. It's been a lot of learnings and pivotings with, things that have been going on. And I think the way to prepare yourself for that is to just do it. My mindset and my faith in life and just my spiritual faith and everything has allowed me just to kind of take those steps. Like, if you really believe in something, it's going to be challenging, but you're going to figure it out. And I've also been very lucky to understand very quickly that you need to find the right people to surround yourself with. So I found the right mentors to kind of annoy as much as I could, and ask them all the questions and get them to help me, to guide me through this process. So sorry, that's probably a lot, but that's been our journey.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's thank you for sharing that, because it's fascinating that, you've gone through multiple businesses, right? That you've started. So you've always had this bug, this entrepreneurial kind of itch to scratch. But the fact that you moved kind of before the business was really kind of off the ground, because you couldn't sell it in Australia because it was illegal to sell it flavored. So you had to kind of take a very big risk to move to the US, rent a room in somebody's house. So you're obviously not living in the lap of luxury, although you are in LA, which is a nice place to be. But you're essentially putting all your chips into the middle of the table and betting on yourself, betting on Melo, and so is your family. And I commend you for that, because that is, again, like I said before, it's not something that everybody would do. So congratulations on that. And I guess now that your family's here, you're living in Beverly Hills area, where is the business now? Like, so you've been selling it in the US since March of 24, so a year and a half almost. So where's the company now? Where's the business now? Like, let's talk about that. And also, where can I get it? Because that's the next question that I know my wife will probably ask me when I tell her about this podcast.
I'll send you some. But so we are going through a great period of scale right now. When we launched, it took us a while to get off the ground. Like, I didn't really have many connections in the US, didn't really know the industry that well. We just knew the plan of how we wanted to launch. We launched online on Shopify and Amazon, and we did start to scale, but we, as a beverage company, postage is very heavy. It's a really cash intensive process. And so we were burning money pretty quickly. And we were getting the sales and we were getting repeat customers and we were getting subscribers, which was awesome. But that cost of acquisition was quite high. And retail, there wasn't enough education about kava at that time. Like even a year and a half ago, that was really early for kava to get into mainstream retail that we're in and scaling into further now. So we decided to change our tact a little bit and start to apply to pitch slams at food and beverage conferences. So Expo West, Fresh Time Pitch Slam, BevNet Live, Beverage Forum. And funnily enough, we started each one either had 200 applications or 100 applications, and we got into honestly almost every single one into the top 15 and onto the stage to pitch. And
Wow.
that allowed us to get in front of the retailers, the investors, the distributors, everyone that we needed to within the industry, and have our voice heard and hear about what we had created. And so our business had been 99% online driven to now, we've gone from 20 independent or maybe 30 independents to now we'll be in 1,000 supermarkets by December. So we won the Fresh Time Pitch Slam at Expo West. That got us into their 70 stores into the Midwest. We're in Bristol Farms and Lassen's. We're launching into all of the Bevmo stores, which is 140 in California, and that will grow further into other states once we prove our velocities. We are launching into Specs in Texas,
Nice.
over your way in Texas later this year, which is awesome. One of 4 non-alcoholic brands going into their new non-alc set that they're creating. And then we were approved into Sprouts, which
Nice.
we're so excited. We'll have our first national launch into Sprouts later this year. We're still waiting for our first PO. So, I've found that sometimes these things, we're so excited. We're going in there. We haven't got the first PO yet, but that will be our first big foray into being the brand that I always kind of envisioned us to be.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And definitely we'll keep an eye out for the launch at Specs. And I guess so that's an interesting tactic that you took because I've watched enough Shark Tank, and anytime there's a food or beverage kind of pitch, the biggest question is always customer acquisition and how do you get the aisle share necessary to scale, right? To actually get into these retailers and repeat customers and repeat orders and all that fun stuff. So but you kind of took an interesting approach that you actually was all right, how do I get in front of these people without paying or cold calling them? It's let me go to pitch competitions. And is that how you kind of started to break down the barriers and kind of say, well, you're getting on stage, you're winning, you're getting to the top 10, top 15. Did that make those conversations, whether they were live at the event or follow up, that much easier?
Yeah, so much so, because all the retailers were at that conference and those conferences. And because not only did they hear us pitching on the stage and hearing why our product is unique in the market and how it's differentiated to a THC drink or an adaptogen drink that doesn't really give you a too much of a feeling, but they heard the judges' feedback. And that was what was really brilliant for us, because we got really great feedback on taste and packaging and effect. So I remember we have a banana cream flavored drink, a banana flavored drink, which is really odd. Not many brands have a banana flavored drink,
Yeah.
but it did give us a differentiation point, and all of these judges kept talking about this banana drink. So at one point after the pitch at BevNet, we had a drove of everyone literally in the room coming straight to our stand, and a big massive line of people wanting to try this controversial banana flavor. So it definitely broke down barriers and allowed us to have the conversations that we need to have and create that intrigue, because THC is highly regulated. It's been pulled off the shelves in California. It's been pulled off the shelves in Arizona. And I know there's been talks in Texas. I think that's been turned around now, which is great. Yeah. But there's been a retailer demand for a different ingredient that gives the consumers an effect but isn't psychedelic and is not heavily regulated. And kava just happens to be here now in the right moment of time. And there's more education about kava now to have its kind of time to scale.
And so is there any risk of regulation for the THC thing? Because yes, that was a big to do in Texas and that's, not going to go through. But is there any risk of that for kava?
Yeah, look, it's going to be really interesting. The biggest problem that we face right now is getting confused or lumped in with kratom. So, are you familiar with kratom?
No.
So I'm not an expert on kratom, so please don't come after me, kratom lovers. But from what I'm aware of, it's kind of similar to an opioid. It's quite highly addictive, and there are kava companies that mix kava and kratom together. Now, can I say that kava will never be regulated? I can't say that because I don't have a crystal ball and I'm not in government. But what I can say is that there's a lot of misinformation about kava creating liver damage, and that is misinformation. It's from a time and place that happened in Germany, where a German pharmaceutical company took highly concentrated pills. They said it was kava, but that the studies were actually never released, and apparently there was a few people that got hurt, or I can't tell you exactly how many people that got hurt from this ethanol concentrated extract. Now, what is true is that there's never been a case of liver damage in the Pacific Islands, where noble varieties of kava have been consumed for thousands of years. And so the WHO and there's leading kava scientists have been working to kind of get rid of that misinformation. Of course, you've got to consume absolutely everything in moderation, but in moderation, noble varieties of kava are very safe to consume. So, and it's non-psychedelic and non-addictive, as I said. So,
got it.
I don't know why it would get more heavily regulated, but you just never know what can happen in this crazy country called the United States and everywhere else. But one other quick thing just to mention on that, I don't want to take too much time, is we have a partnership with the United Nations, and we're working really closely with them. They've got a kava project specifically for the Pacific Islands, so we are actually working with them as well to help to speed up some of that research and get out the accurate information.
Is that so? It's also, I guess, is there a risk of lack of supply? Like if it's only grown in a few islands that are, halfway around the world, like how does that impact? And, let's talk about tariffs. Like, I don't know if this is impacting you or not, but, like what's that kind of look like from a scale? Like, let's say, I don't think I've got the same reach as a Shark Tank, but let's say somebody listens to this and they go buy 1 million, cans of it. Like, is that an issue as well as you think about scaling the business?
Yeah, look, we have to monitor that really, really closely and work with the right people within the Pacific Islands, which is what we're doing with the United Nations, to make sure that supply is rampant and they're growing kava as they need to for the scale, because kava is the Pacific Islands' biggest export. It's the export that makes the country money. So it's really important to their economy to be planting kava in a sustainable way to ensure that, that they're bringing in the money for their families and their communities. Now, the good thing about kava is that 20 kilos of kava root creates 10,000 cans. So it is a really potent ingredient that you don't need like a ridiculous amount to create quite an abundance of kava drinks specifically, which is what I'm talking about. Yeah. But absolutely, the biggest threat that we see for kava is natural disasters like cyclones. And so we have, particularly for Melo, de-risked our business by creating multiple relationships with direct kava farmers and companies to help to move around where the supply comes from. Like Vanuatu in itself has 80 islands, and then there's Fiji, Samoa, Tonga. Like there's a lot of islands within that. But sure, like kava takes 18 months to grow. So it definitely is a factor that, is being worked on now to make sure that future supply is can be kept up with.
And can you grow it in other places? Could you move it to the US? Could you move kava production, at least some of it, to the US as a hedge to, because obviously natural disasters could happen, and then it's not a flip of the switch to get the production back online. Is that even like possible? I don't know if we can grow it.
So they grow it in Hawaii as well, okay. But I have heard talks on the grapevine of kava plants being grown in Florida, for example. Now, I feel mixed feelings about it. Like I'd much rather do the work to make sure that the Pacific Islands are set up, because it is such a heritage. Like kava is their heritage, and it's such a special plant to their communities that I want to keep it there and give back to their communities and really support what is, third world. I don't know if that's the right word, but some of the areas are quite third world. Absolutely. And so my view is let's support those nations and have our drink not only help consumers in the United States and wherever we grow it with their anxiousness and, with their stress relief and winding back, but let's help communities over there too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think as I was saying that, I didn't want to come across as like the American, like, let's bring everything over here or like
No,
whatever.
it's
But I think
developing.
it's, yeah, I think it's amazing that you are working with the United Nations on supporting to make sure that they have the things that they need in the event of, a natural disaster. So it doesn't completely wipe out all of their revenue, because if that's their biggest export, like that could really damage their economy, essentially. So,
Absolutely, 100%.
um, what about kind of have you guys raised money? Like, how did you scale? Like, obviously, you put a lot of your own capital into it. I know you've got a co-founder, I believe, as well. Like, and then would love to know about kind of how you've scaled, and then what does the team look like right now?
Yeah. So, yes, we have raised money through friends and family at this stage. And
Nice.
funnily enough, almost all of our money has come out of Australia. We've not like the founders putting in a significant amount of money, but then also friends and family around us who just know us and I guess trust us and believe in what we're doing, which is, amazing. But we are now getting to that point where we are scaling, our velocities and our retailers are scaling, and we would love to bring on some strategic advisors and some money from the US as well, and in more of a VC capacity. So we're raising right now, and then we'll do a Series A next year as well. And then when it comes to our team, so we have a small but mighty team. I feel so grateful for the people that work with us. We have myself as CEO and co-founder. We have Nick Payne. He basically is our COO and helps to really lead the profitability and the operational kind of excellence. He came from a Fortune 500 $40 billion agricultural machinery company, funnily enough, and he's one of our biggest investors in the company. But he had a passion and could give his expertise to us, which is amazing when he stepped out of his role there. And so having him by our side, helping us to scale this efficiently, has just been like it's a game changer, and I'm so grateful. We have Zoe, who leads our operations and helps with retail sales. We have our team in Australia that has a shareholder on the ground, as I said, with Vanuatu and that connection over there. And then we have my husband. Whilst he doesn't take a salary from the business, he does do our demand planning and our forecasting and financial modeling and data, like ads, media buying as well, because he has that real numbers background. And we do work with a couple of little agencies as well that definitely support us from a content perspective. But yeah, that's our mighty little team at the moment.
And are you guys all based in LA? Or are you distributed? Like, always gonna. I get the question from people like, "What's the best? Is it a in-person workforce? Is it a distributed workforce? Like hybrid? Like, what's your kind of focus now?"
Good question. So there's 3 full-time, like myself, my husband, and Zoe here on the ground in the US, and our agencies are in the US as well. Our advisory, like Nick, he's based in Melbourne, Australia, but he gives, at least 20 hours a week to the team. And then we are bringing on, which is like a field sales manager. That's the next role that will really help us as we scale into our retailers to help us with our merchandising, and they will actually lead an internship program so we can have more boots on the ground in the States where we'll be selling.
Got it. Fascinating. And I think on the website there's 3 flavors. So maybe share the flavors, and then is there any 4th flavor in the works if you can share?
Yeah, so we have our 3 flavors. We have our passion fruit, orange, and guava, our banana cream, our controversial flavor, and which people love. People are obsessed with, by the way. So if you haven't tried it, try it and tell me what you think. We've had so many people say, "I hate banana drinks," and then they love it. And then we have lime. So that's our 3. We do have a 4th flavor coming out in December. I'm going to keep it a secret just because it'll be an exclusive.
Totally fair.
It'll be an exclusive SKU for a retailer for an amount of time. So that's really exciting, but it's a flavor that most people absolutely love, which is, it's really exciting.
Very cool. We'll tease it, and then we'll know about it later this year, hopefully, and that'll be awesome. So I guess I'm curious a little bit about, as we kind of wind this thing down. You went through a traumatic family life event, still pursued an entrepreneur journey. I never had any type of a negative family impact to myself, like when I was trying to start a business, but I guess, how do you, like, if somebody's listening to this and like, I can never start a business because of X, Y, and Z, whether it's my husband had a brain injury or I just don't have the money to do it. Like, there's obviously varying levels of I don't think I can do it. But like, what's something that maybe you learned or heard? Because obviously it sounds like you've surrounded yourself with the right people, mentors, things like that. Like, what's some advice either you would give or you got that you want to share that would kind of help somebody take that leap if that's really their passion to start a business?
Yeah, great question. Look, I just don't believe that what you want to create is not possible. And I don't and like, yes, I think your circumstances can make it more difficult or more challenging, but I just think you have to think more outside the box. Like, if you don't have money, find people with money. If you
Mm,
don't have the skill set, find the person to help you with the skill set. There's just, when there's a will, there's a way. And I believe that since I was a really young age. And I think that that has always supported me. I do think you have to be a risk taker. Like, if you're not willing to risk everything and, be as passionate about it in the low times as you are in the high times, then I wouldn't start. I think that's probably the most important thing, is you need to sense check your life and think, like, what am I willing to lose here? And is what I'm doing worth losing that? Because it can very likely happen. So when
yeah.
I was thinking about my life, I'm like, okay, well, we've invested all of our money into this, and family's money, and honestly, we've given up bigger house. We've given up everything for this. And if it all turns to shit, what do we do? Well, the reality is that we're still very privileged. We have a family, a mum and a dad in Australia that would take us and our family in a heartbeat. And do I have the skills to be able to rebuild and get a job and to, make my family money again? Yes, I do. So in that position, then I don't have much to lose. So yeah, I think there's always a way, but you have to be willing to feel comfortable with what you could lose. And if you're comfortable, then go for it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense, and I love that you're kind of all in. My entrepreneurial journey is definitely not as flavorful as yours, because you've done a lot more creative things. Especially, we didn't even talk about you flying back and forth to Australia every 6 to 8 weeks. I can't even imagine you were on the same time zone. You probably just all were flip flopping. But
But
I
great. Yeah.
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
blind.
But no, I think it's really fascinating, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. I guess, if we jumped on a podcast, 12 months from now, like, what's like one or two things that from the business perspective you would like to have happen, and then that podcast would be, one to celebrate.
Yeah, look, something that I would absolutely love to happen in 12 to 18 months, and I don't think we've nailed it yet. And I think that we're at the starting blocks and getting there, but I'd love that, we have more of a national brand awareness. I
Mm,
really hope that in 12 to 18 months' time, people think about kava and they think Melo straight away, and they've heard about us and they've seen us. That to me would be absolutely winning. And then obviously all of the retailers, 1,000 doors plus that we're launching into right now, I'd absolutely love for our velocities to be absolutely killing it. We're really doing well with our early velocities in our smaller retailers, but that would just be the dream, because those two things really matter in enabling us to continue scaling and become the national brand that we kind of dream about.
awesome. Well, wishing you all of the success possible. So as we wrap things up here, I want to end it like I end every podcast with a 3-pack of questions. First question is, what is an influential book or podcast that you would recommend?
I would recommend any book by Russell Brunson. He
Okay.
is the entrepreneur that started ClickFunnels. He has the .com trilogy, because that will teach you how to be resourceful, how to create something out of nothing, and also how to story tell. And I think that if you can be confident to kind of share your story, that will help you with whatever you're doing. And then, can I just have a podcast too? Emma
Yeah, sure.
Green. for any female entrepreneur, I love listening to the Aspire podcast by Emma Grede because she's no bullshit. She just says it how it is, and she's really going after it confidently. And I feel like in this industry, you have to back yourself and you have to have confidence. Otherwise, you'll just shrivel away in a corner and not get up.
Yeah. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, and you get knocked down way more than you would think and that you would like to. So it's all about, having that thick skin and being able to pick yourself up. So love that. Favorite thing to do outside of work?
Yeah, it varies. I'm a bit of an adventure person. So if I had the time and the money and everything at my disposal, you'd find me behind a speedboat with my family, riding on biscuits and wakeboarding and, doing those types of things. But that's not the reality of my life regularly right now. So the small wins that I love doing is just like taking my kids to Home Goods, giving them $20 and finding little treasures to kind of make our little home here in America feel really special, or just going on little adventures that don't cost much, but it's quality time together.
Yeah, you don't need to spend a lot of money to enjoy family and friends and all that stuff. You don't have to go someplace crazy. You can, I think that's an interesting idea, giving your kids $20 into Home Goods, because you could probably find some interesting things there for sure.
You can be there for hours. I love it.
That's great. All right, last question here. And maybe this is on the same theme as the speedboating, but I guess favorite spot to vacation?
You can't go past Europe, in my opinion.
Okay.
I lived in Europe in 2011 for a year, and I was very privileged to travel around to Spain, and I lived there for a little while in Italy. And I just think it's a beautiful country. It's got beautiful countries. It's got so much history, and I feel really free in Europe. So that's my favorite place to vacation. And of course, heading back to Australia to see family and friends is the best as well.
Yeah, and Bora Bora is not anything too shabby either, I would say. That's definitely been on one of my bucket lists very, very early on. I know a few people that have gone there, and the flight there, like getting there, is not easy because it's obviously a very small island, but well worth it from what I understand. So
at the time in Bora Bora, there was a lot of Instagram filters going around, and it was really funny that when I was there, if you were to take a photo and try and filter it, it would look worse with the filter than it did in real life. Like that is just like genuinely
amazing.
Picture perfect. Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. Well, I definitely have to maybe move that back to the top of my list then, I think. This has been really awesome, Amy. I really appreciate the time. If people want to reach out, learn about you, learn about Melo, Kava, anything, what's the best place to catch you?
So you can email me. My email is just Amy, AMY, @drinkmelo.co, not .com.co. Or we have our website, www.drinkmelo.co. They're the two easiest ways to get in touch.
Awesome. This has been awesome, Amy. I really appreciate it. Wish you all the best, and can't wait for Kava to hit the shelves here or Melo to hit the shelves here in Texas. So definitely we'll try that out.
Thanks for an awesome conversation, Justin. I appreciate it.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.